You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. I have a lot of really cool friends who do a lot of really cool things. I wanted to make it a goal to sit down with these friends and spend about 15 minutes or so getting to know them better and find out about their past, present, and their future. The result is this show. My name is Grant Baciocco, and this is 15 Minutes With. Bill Larkin is a comedic songwriter and a very good friend, and he is today's guest on 15 Minutes With. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Grant, for having me.
We have been friends for a long time.
Yes.
And we are going to talk about all the different things you do. But I want to start with, where did you grow up?
Bedford, Massachusetts, where all that Lexington, Concord stuff, Paul Revere stuff seemed to happen.
Yeah.
I grew up there in 1969. Stayed in Bedford, Massachusetts, with my folks, my twin brother, my other brother, grew up there, took piano lessons when I was a kid, and had a lot of Tom Lehrer albums as a kid.
Yeah, well, that definitely shows in your work. But when you were the piano lessons your idea? No?
They were not. My mom turned to my twin brother and I and said, pointed to me and said, okay, you're going to take piano lessons. And she pointed to my twin brother and said, and you're going to take tap dancing lessons. And of course, I kind of taunted him as a kid, like, you have to tap dance. Now, of course, at my age of 47, I would love to tap dance.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right. And I kept it up, and I was classically trained for 10 years, all through high school. And I didn't really like doing the classical. I brought in my own 80s sheet music and said, can I play this?
Yeah.
And the teacher, of course, was like, well, how about doing the Schubert first? Then we can work on the Duran Duran. Fine.
Right.
But yeah, I did it. I played for over 10 years. Lessons for about 10 years.
Yeah. And you're also somebody who, you're a performer in stage shows and stuff. Did you, because I know you recently did The Producers.
Yes.
Were you performing in high school as well?
I was.
Theater?
My brother and I both did that. We did all, if there were plays or musicals or anything like that, we would audition. We would do them. We did them all through high school. My twin brother did a lot of them. He was like a real performer in the family. When we both went to he went to Boston University for a while. I went to UMass, and we did the same thing. I didn't major in theater. I didn't, you don't know what you want to be when you're 19 or 20. So I had a communications degree. I wanted to be a DJ. That's all I knew. But I did productions there too, and mostly musicals, and loved it. And still wasn't doing my own songs at that time, but still was listening to like Tom Lehrer, Alan Sherman, all that stuff.
Right. And were you? I know you said your mom said you were going to, play piano and your brother's going to tap dance. And right before we went on the air, you were talking, your dad took maybe some stand-up classes or some comedy class and stuff. Were your parents creative?
My mother was. My mom, who taught at Lesley University, taught in the education department, she was in productions when she was younger. She played Anita in West Side Story. She would direct a lot of the shows we did in our elementary school. Which was a little weird because, I'm there. I'm like, Mom.
Yeah.
But was perfect. Was wonderful at it. My dad, not as much. My dad was had many different jobs. Was principal at Dearborn Elementary, and he was also Middlesex County Commissioner in Massachusetts, and Register of Probate. And when you run for office, you bring the kids, and we were like the cute factor because my twin brother and I were, would always go with him whenever he was campaigning.
Yeah.
But my dad was like, well, I got to pep up these speeches, throw a little humor in it. So he took a comedy class with the great Ron Lynch, who I think you know.
Yes.
And this is 1989, way back in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I tagged along with him. I couldn't have been, it might have even been before college. This might have been 87, 88, actually. I might have been just out of high school. And my dad and I both went up at the then Catch a Rising Star in Harvard Square in Cambridge. And we both, he did his political jokes, and I did whatever my silly jokes were. And it was bizarre, man. It was like getting up, doing it. Your friends would come, they would applaud, you feel good. And then you get down, and the open mic's over, and then Louis C.K. gets up. he couldn't have been. He can't be like a year or two older than me.
Yeah.
He gets up, full head of red hair. David Cross gets up he has a full afro. He has like a sketch troupe that was pre Mr. Show. He knew exactly what he wanted to do at that time. Lewis Black would get up. All these people would get up, and of course, me at that age, not knowing what they would all eventually become. But boy, that venue, Catch a Rising Star, was one of the main places where I was like, I think I want to do this for a living.
Yeah,
something like this.
Did you continue doing stand-up?
I did. It was very on and off. I moved to Orlando, Florida after I graduated college, simply because a friend of mine loved Disney. He was like, oh, you want to tag along? I'm like, great, I will. My first job was Pluto. I hate to break the reality for everyone, but there's someone in the suit. It's a suit.
What? Podcast over.
Yeah. Kids go to bed. So I did that for a while, but I would do stand-up and I would do improv. I did comedy, sports, and all that. So I was like, perform wherever, whenever. It still wasn't about songs or anything. It was just about getting up on stage and performing any kind of comedy I could.
Well, and you were playing piano all that time, and you were playing the '80s music, as you said. Were you ever in like a band? Did you ever join a band or something?
No, not really. I mean, my current regular job is at Howl at the Moon, which is a dueling piano bar, which is now the format of a band. We have like bass, drums, everything, so we are a full band. But I never did anything like that. The comedy songs really didn't happen until at one point in Orlando, they had like fringe festivals, and SAC Theater was out there, which I got involved in, and they would have like variety shows and stuff, and I would play piano for the improvisers. And somewhere along the line, and I honestly can't remember the first songs I wrote, but I just tried a few, and they let me do them on stage. And of course, I loved it. Of course, again, as a kid, listen to Tom Lehrer, didn't understand many of his references, even as a kid. I'm like, I don't know who Hubert Humphrey is. I don't know why this is funny. Right. All I know is that he's playing piano, he's singing, and people are laughing.
People are laughing.
I'm like, that's what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you and then you eventually made it out here to Southern California, because that's where I met you.
Yeah.
And I think pretty much when I met you, you were doing comedy songs, like you were going around doing your. How did you, like, a lot of your comedy songs, at least back then in those days, were about your family, or quote unquote family,
right.
Maybe not your real family, but your imagined family.
Yeah.
How did you decide, like, that's what you're going to write songs about?
Well, the troupe from Orlando, we moved out here to L.A. together.
Okay.
And Wayne Brady was part of that troupe. I was his keyboard player for a few years when he was out here, as he's been out here. And this is like 1996 we all came out. And since I worked at theme parks in Orlando, that's what I immediately did when I came out here. I went to Knott's Berry Farm and worked out there as a piano player. I loved it, but it was just me out on the street in Ghost Town while people walked to roller coasters, and it was kind of boring. So honestly, the idea for the songs and the idea for the album came out of boredom.
Yeah.
I would go to the break room, have nothing to do. There'd be a piano in there. I don't know the impetus for my twin song or my grandpa song, but they came out of that break room. And what I realized that it wasn't a choice to do a song about family members. Those two just happened to be about family members. So when I realized that, I'm like, well, just try to put a whole album together of, and make most of it can be made up or whatever. And so that's what I did. And that was in 2000 at a friend's studio. I just put it all together and made my first album.
Yeah. I don't know if I should bring this up. I seem to remember you saying at Knott's Berry Farm, like, it was like not an exciting job, as you said. It's very boring. But like, didn't you say like you would get up and walk around? Not to get you in trouble with Knott's Berry Farm all this years later, but like, you're supposed to be playing, but you would just get up and walk. Oh, around.
I would play, but I would do my sets, maybe not at the designated times.
Right.
I do one, and then maybe I'd ride a roller coaster. And then come back. But no, I mean the job itself was fun. I mean, after a while, I kind of made it, the job could be whatever you wanted it to be. And when I realized that it could be just me sitting on the sidelines, some days I would just do that. Like, all right, here's a song from the 30s or 40s, whatever. But then sometimes I would throw, some improv into it if people caught on. And I was like, we did some Streamosphere type stuff. I was a gunslinger, and that was a blast. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, the boredom was more like in the break room. Like, I have nothing to do. We didn't have our cell phones at that time.
Right.
Like, I have to do something.
Well, it's funny though that like sort of boredom can inspire the creativity. You're like,
yeah.
I got to do something
to
break this up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, Howl at the Moon, because I think when I met you, you were working Howl at the Moon up at Universal Universal City Walk here in California.
Right.
And it's a dueling piano bar,
right.
And you play mostly cover songs, or pretty much all cover songs, right?
Yeah. The format has changed somewhat. I mean, it used to be the traditional piano bar of just two pianists, and you would do... And what I liked about it is you could throw comedy bits in. Some of them were, already set things you would sing to a bachelorette or whatever. Over the years, it's transformed more into, like I said, like a band kind of thing. And it's more now about current day pop songs. It's still Billy Joel and that kind of thing during the week. But as you get closer to the weekend, the bachelorette parties come, they want that newer stuff. But I've been with the company 16 years.
Yeah.
And I love it. I mean, I do get to throw my comedy in, and do these outside projects, do theater, do my own songs at the same time. So I moved out to Chicago when they built a Howl at the Moon in Chicago. That was 2003. I went out for the opening and just fell in love with the city of Chicago, and it's been 16 years.
Yeah. When you released your first album, Bill's Family Fun Time, did you kind of tour with it, go around and do shows with it, or do fringe festivals or something?
I did. I started out here in L.A., doing whatever venues I could. When the Ha Ha Cafe was here, they would have like a stand-up contest, and I would lug my keyboard, which wasn't my favorite part of the gig. It's like I love doing the music, but lugging an amp and a keyboard. But I won one of those, and I performed in Vegas. The prize was to perform in Vegas. I opened for Bob Zaney at the Riviera, at the now defunct Riviera. And I had that gig. I went to San Francisco. I went to New York. San Francisco was the Fringe Festival. New York was also defunct Rose's Turn and Don't Tell Mamas and wonderful venues like that. So yeah, and back to Orlando because I was familiar with it, did their festivals. So that was most of the touring I did with it.
Yeah. And you, before you recorded the album, I was a huge fan of your songs because they're just hilarious.
And yours as well.
Thank you. And we did a lot of shows together. And when that album came out and you sent it to Dr. Demento, and suddenly you're getting played alongside Tom Lehrer.
Yes.
And then I think one of the coolest things was, whenever Weird Al has a new album, he's interviewed on Dr. Demento. Yeah. And Dr. Demento usually asks him to bring along, like, oh, what's making you laugh, Al? And he mentioned you and played a song off your album. So what was that like to have a sort of a nod from Weird Al?
And you, I have to thank for making me aware of that. I wasn't even, I mentioned Tom Lehrer, listening to him as a kid. My twin brother and I religiously listened to Dr. Demento every Sunday throughout the 80s. And you sent me that clip when he was Straight Outta Linwood?
Yeah, I think so.
The album?
Yeah.
He was promoting that. And you'd send it to me, and it's like, all right, Weird Al, you're the DJ now. What would you like to play? And I remember, this is going to sound so show busy, which is great. Why not? Fred Willard introduced me to Weird Al Yankovic at the American Comedy Awards, and Fred Willard has always been very supportive of my career. And I handed Weird Al my CD. Didn't really think anything of it. I'm like, here, idol of mine. Here's something I did.
Yeah.
And when you sent me that clip and I listened and he played my grandpa song, I was floored. I was like, and he had reached me himself and said, that he listened to that CD whenever he was traveling or touring, and he was a huge fan of it. I'm like, thank you, Mr. Yankovic.
Yeah, that's totally awesome.
Yeah.
So you moved to Chicago and you're working at Howl at the Moon and doing other theater things, and so now. I think you said it was 15 years between albums, because now you have a brand new album out called Knowing Your Audience.
Yeah.
And so where did the songs on this album kind of come from? Because they're not really about family.
No. This was not out of boredom, I can assure you. This was, there's a wonderful venue in Chicago. Obviously, Chicago's known for its jazz and blues. And there's an amazing club called the Green Mill. Mm-hmm. Very famous club in Chicago. And I would always walk by it. It's near where I live, thinking, well, I'm not going to go in there. I can't play jazz or blues to save my life. But I found out that every Saturday they have, the best way to describe it is a variety show. It's called The Paper Machete. And Christopher Pyatt hosts it, this wonderfully creative gentleman. And, comedians, musicians, op-ed pieces, journalists, everybody takes part. And usually they discuss, the news of the week. everybody like might get a subject to talk about. And I was just a fan, so I went and I did the songs I already knew from my Fun Time album. And the host said, would you like to, if I give you an assignment for a song, would you get up and do it? I'm like, sure. And I just kept doing it. And sometimes a song would come out of an assignment, but sometimes I would just come up with my own. And my creative juices got flowing again. And it's just so weird. After a short amount of time, I had this whole body of work. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have another album in me.
Yeah.
And that's what this new album is. And it was actually recorded at the Green Mill, which is an honor in itself that they would, let me do that there. And it was recorded in this past September of 2016. And
was it one show or multiple shows that you selected?
It was a little nerve-wracking because I hear your albums and you do it live, and I never recorded anything live. I was so nervous, and we really just had the one show, but I'd set it up like, if we make any mistakes, okay, we'll take a break and we'll do some others. And what you're listening to on the album is really just the first take. Like, we did my final song, Making a Difference. There were a few hiccups. I thought they wanted me to do it again, but after listening to it again, I was like, no, this is fine. So it's very strange. The first take is the album, and I thought it turned out amazingly well.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I think I've been listening to it since it came out because I got it off of iTunes and stuff. It's so good, and your piano playing is just amazing. And I think that you said that for 10 years as a kid you took classically trained piano, but also, man, I mean, working at Howl at the Moon for however many hours a night for however many years, people talk about what 10,000 hours to be good at something.
To be right.
And I think you've gone probably over that 10,000 hours. But do you believe that it's like, you just got to do it, you just got to practice?
Oh yeah,
for your.
Yeah, it's weird, like, having Howl at the Moon be my job. So yes, I'm always in front of the piano, and that's great. I mean, the majority of it was pop songs and everything. I mean, now I'm in the, everyone has their own journey of how they, when I lived here in Los Angeles, I would do my songs, but I never really went after it. I never really, took the next step after, I did a premium blend, and I did after the Riviera. But after that, I didn't really take steps to find out, okay, what's next? What can I do after that? Mm-hmm. Like the next big. And now with this album, I'm so much more motivated to bring this out into the world, because this one album's a lot more, Fun Time was almost, again, more about the silliness. This one, with the way, the country, of course, is going, and I think you'll maybe relate to this. It's like writing some of these songs, especially if it's about yourself or it's about the news, it's very therapeutic. Mm-hmm. It's like, you have something to say, you're angry about, you just get it out through song, and it's like, that's a great way for me to vent. And this album I wouldn't say, it's not really a political album, but there are some songs that mention what's going on in the current climate we live in. And so it really is different from the first album in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, another thing I wanted to ask is, I saw your show the other night, which was hilarious, out here in LA, and you mentioned that you kind of don't perform the Grandpa song anymore because it hurts you physically. Uh-huh. And I have my song. It's called Debbie, but the Stalker song that I do. And one thing I used to do every performance was I would, lick the microphone, mm-hmm. and it would get this great reaction from the audience. And so I want to ask you, what's it like not doing a piece that is I know I could kill this audience if I did the Grandpa song.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to do it because for health reasons, sort of. What's that like?
It's strange because I'm not necessarily sure nowadays if it would kill necessarily. Like now it's not like, we could talk about, comedy in terms of being politically correct or whatever, and that would take hours. But it's like the times I have, tried to go full out, like I will sing the song if I'm not performing for a day or two. It's just so, mm-hmm. Obviously for the listener, the Grandpa song is one where I just make an awful kind of sound, but something you discover is if you do it in an unhealthy way and just strain your vocal cords, people will laugh more, which is just awful. But I realized that
right
doing the song. And so when I was younger, 15 years ago, I was a little healthier. I could bounce back from it. Now it's like not as much, but I would do it, and people would get uncomfortable sometimes hearing the song back then, but I think even a little more now. So again, like with anything, it depends on your audience.
The audience,
but yeah, it is. That's why I was saying at the show, it's like, well, at least I have it on CD. You can listen to it, and then
right.
You can imagine how it goes.
Yeah. Well, as we're wrapping up here, I would love to talk about, just because I'm always interested in this. I don't know if this is interesting to anybody else, but it's interesting to me. When you're writing something, when you got a challenge for one of these songs or whatever, and you're going to write, do you write out longhand on in a notebook, a pen and paper? What's your writing process? How do you write?
I've always been, it's interesting how it's segued from paper to now just doing it on my laptop. I like writing. I just like writing stuff out. When I'm most of the time now, that's when I'm in creative venues, and I'm or if I'm going to a coffee house or something like that. I don't usually bring my laptop. I'll just but now that I could type stuff into my phone, and if I do a show at the Green Mill, I'm already home. The laptop's there, so I'll type it out, print it out, bring it with me. So over the last few years, it's started to move in that direction. But there's still, for me anyway, in terms of just having an idea, this is a great idea. There's still not beating having a notepad, for me anyway.
Yeah.
And just jotting it down and having it.
Yeah. Well, Bill, as before we say goodbye, if people want to find you online, where can they go?
BillLarkin.com is my website, and the CD is available at cdbaby.com. There's also a link on BillLarkin.com to get there. And digital downloads are, I believe, at this point, everywhere. iTunes, Spotify, all the regular places. So.
Yeah, I guarantee, folks, if you go check it out on Spotify or go stream the album anywhere, you will be buying the album because it is hilarious. And Bill, thank you so much for coming here today. I appreciate it.
It is so good to see you.
Good to see you. Bill Larkin is a comedic songwriter and was today's guest on 15 Minutes With. You owe it to yourself to visit BillLarkin.com and check out Bill's music. It is so funny. That's www.BillLarkin.com. 15 Minutes With on the GrantCast is a production of Saturday Morning Media and made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a monthly donation for as little as $1 a month. Huge thanks to Shay Stewart, Mur Lafferty, Jeff Peterson, Dale Gadania, Steven Staver, Jackie Klimo, Melissa Crawford, Chuck, Matthew Wayne Selznick, Dave Slesher of the Evil Genius Chronicles, Mike Coughlin, Dorothy Baciocco, John D., Kathy Crawford, Brian Greer, Carrie Whitney, Chuck Tomasi, Chris Foster, Stephen Ing, Clinton of ComedyForecast.com, Vicky DeVries, Mike Wabshall, Twitter user Butzengear, a.k.a. Wildcat, Eve Cunning, Mike Hamilton, Gaston Moreno, Reed Loveland, Ivan Asquith, Vanessa Whitney, Nancy McCarthy, and Janine Lee. If you'd like to support this show and the other fun content from Saturday Morning Media, become a patron. Head on over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up your monthly donation today. You can also tell a friend about the show or leave the show a review on iTunes. And while you're over there in iTunes, be sure to click that subscribe button. That way you'll get new episodes the moment they are released. If you have feedback for this show, you can send it directly to me at grant@throwingtoasters.com or get in touch via Twitter, where my username is ToasterBoy. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time. The GrantCast is copyright 2017 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Baciocco, executive producer. All rights reserved. www.SaturdayMorningMedia.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.